Alusta vaan. Yes, because he never did a thing like that before, as asked to get his breakfast in bed with a couple of eggs, since the City Arms Hotel when he used to be pretending to be laid up with a sick voice doing his highness to make himself interesting for that old faggot, Mrs. Riordan, that he thought he had a great leg of, and she never left us a farthing, all for masses for herself, and her soul, greatest miser ever, was actually afraid to lay out for her methylated spirit, telling me all her ailments she had too much old chat in her about politics and earthquakes and the end of the world. Let us have a bit of fun first. God help the world if all the women were her sort, down on bathing suits and low necks. Of course nobody wanted her to wear them. I suppose she was pious because no man would look at her twice. I hope I'll never be like her. I wonder she didn't want us to cover our faces, but she was a well-educated woman, certainly, and her gappy talk about Mr. Riordan here and Mr. Riordan there. I suppose he was glad to get shut of her and her dog, smelling my fur and always itching to get up under my petticoats, especially then. Still, I like that in him. Polite to old women like that, and waiters and beggars too. He's not proud of nothing, but not always. If ever he got anything really serious the matter with him, it's much better for them to go into a hospital where everything is clean. But I'd suppose I'd have to drink it into him for a month, yes. And then we'd have a hospital nurse next thing on.
The carpet have him staying there till they throw him out, or a nun maybe, like a smutty father he has. She's much a nun as I'm not, yes, because they're so weak, and puling when they're sick. They want a woman to get well. If this nose bleeds, you think it was oh tragic. And that dying looking one of the South Circular when he sprained his foot at the poor party at the Sugarloaf Mountain, the day I wore that dress. Miss Stack bringing him flowers, the worst old ones she could find at the bottom of the basket. Anything at all to get into a man's bedroom with her old maid's voice trying to imagine he was dying on account of her to never see thy face again. Though he looked more like a man with his beard, a bit grown in the bed, father was the same. Besides, I hate bandaging and dosing when he cuts his toe with the razor praising his corns afraid head gets blood poisoning. But if there was a thing, I was sick, then we'd see what attention, only of course the woman hides it not to give all the trouble they do. Yes, he came somewhere, I'm sure by his appetite anyway. Love it's not, or head be off his feet thinking of her. So either it was one of those night women, if it was down there, he was really, and the hotel story he made up a pack of lies to hide it, planning it Heinz, kept me who did I meet? Oh yes, I met, do you remember Menton? And who else who let me see that big baby face? I saw him, and he not long married, flirting with a young girl at pools.
Miriorama, and turned my back on him when he slinked out looking quite conscious what harm um, but he had the impudence to make up to me one time. Well done to him, mouth almighty, and his boiled eyes, of all the big stupos I ever met. And that's called a solicitor. Only for I hate having a long wrangle in bed. Or else, if it's not that, it's some little bitch or other he got in with somewhere or picked up on the sly. If they only knew him as well as I do, yes. Because the day before yesterday he was scribbling something, a letter, when I came into the front room to show him Dignam's death in the paper, as if something told me, and he covered it up with the blotting paper, pretending to be thinking about business. So very probably that was it to somebody who thinks she has a softy in him, because all men get a bit like that at his age, especially getting on to 40. He's now so as to wheedle any money she can out of him. No fool, like an old fool. And and then the usual kissing my bottom was to hide it. Not that I care two straws now who does it with or knew before that way, though I'd like to find out so long as I don't have to chew of them under my nose all the time, like that slut, that Mary we had in Ontario Terrace, cutting out her false bottom to excite him bad enough to get the smell of those painted women of him once or twice. I had a suspicion by getting him to cover near me when I found the long hair on his coat without that one when I went into the kitchen, pretending he was drinking water. One woman is not enough of them. It was
All his fault, of course, ruining servants, then proposing that she could eat at our table on Christmas Day, if you please. Oh, no, thank you, not in my house, stealing my potatoes and the oysters, 2 out of 6 per dozen, going out to see her aunt, if you please. Common robbery, so it was. But I was sure he had something on with that one. It takes me to find out a thing like that. He said you have no proof it was her. Proof? Oh yes, her aunt was very fond of oysters, but I told her what I thought of her, suggesting me to go out to be alone with her. I wouldn't lower myself to spy on them. The garters I found in her room the Friday. She was out. That was enough for me, a little bit too much. Her face swelled up on her with temper when I gave her her week's notice. I saw to that better do without them altogether. Do out the rooms myself quicker, only for the damn cooking and throwing out the dirt I gave it to him anyhow. Either she or me leaves the house, I couldn't even touch him. If I thought he was with a dirty bare-faced liar and sloven like that, one denying it up to my face, and singing about the place in the VC too. Because she knew she was too well off. Yes, because he couldn't possibly do without it that long, so he must do it somewhere. And the last time he came on my bottom, when was it? Must do it somewhere. When was it? The night Boylan gave my hand a great squeeze, going along by the tolka in my hand. There steals another. I just pressed the back of his like that, with my thumb to squeeze back, singing the young May moon. She's beaming love.
Because he has an idea about him, and me, he's not such a fool, he said. I'm dining out and going to the Gaiety, though I'm not going to give him the satisfaction in any case. God knows he's a chance in a way not to be always and ever wearing the same old hat, unless I paid some nice-looking boy to do it, since I can't do it myself. A young boy would like me. I'd confuse him a little. Alone with him, if we were, I'd let him see my garters, the new ones, and make him turn red looking at him. Seduce him. I know what boys feel, with that down on their cheek going that freaking drawing out of the thing by the hour, question and answer. Would you do this, that, and the other with the Coleman? Yes. With the bishop? Yes, I would, because I told him about some dean or bishop was sitting beside me in the Jewish temple's gardens when I was knitting that woolen thing. A stranger to Dublin, what place was it? And so on about the monuments, and he tired me out with statues, encouraging him, making him worse than he is. Who is in your mind? Now tell me. Who are you thinking of? Who is it? Tell me. Tell me his name. Who tell me who the German emperor is it? Yes. Imagine I'm him. Think of him. Can you feel him trying to make a whore of me? What he never will, he ought to give up right now. At this age of this life, simply ruination for any woman and no satisfaction in it. Pretending to like it till he comes and then finish it off myself anyway. And it makes your lips pale.
anyhow. It's done now, once and for all. With all the talk of the world about it, people make it only the first time after that it's just the ordinary do it and think no more about it. Why can't you kiss a man without going and marrying him? First, you sometimes laugh too wildly. When you feel the way so nice all over you, you can't help yourself. I wish some man or other would take me sometime, when he's there and kiss me in his arms. There's nothing like a kiss, long and hot, down to your soul, almost paralyzes you. Then I hate that confession. When I used to go to the Father Corrigan, he touched me, Father, and what harm if he did wear, and I said, on the canal bank, like a fool, but whereabouts on your person, my child on the leg, behind, high up, was it? Yes. Rather high up, was it, where you sit down? Yes. Oh Lord, couldn't he say bottom right out and have done with it? What has that got to do with it? And what did you, whatever way he put it, I forget, no father. And I always think of the real father. What did he want to know? For when I already confessed it to God, he had a nice fat hand, the palm moist. Always I wouldn't mind feeling it. Neither would he, I'd say, by the bull neck in his horse collar. I wondered did he know me in the box. I could see his face. He couldn't see mine, of course. He'd never turn or let on his still eyes were red when his father died. They lost for a woman. Of course, must be a terrible when a man cries, let alone them I'd like to be embraced by one in his vestments, and the small of incense of him, like the Pope. Besides,
There's no danger with a priest if you're married. He's too careful about himself, then give something to H. the Pope for a penance. I wonder was he satisfied with me? One thing I didn't like, he slapping me behind, going away so familiarly in the hall, though I laughed. I'm not a horse or an ass, am I? I suppose he was thinking of his father's. I wonder is he awake thinking of me, or dreaming am I in it who gave him that flower? He said he bought his melts of some kind of drink, not whiskey or stout, or perhaps the sweety kind of paste they stick their bills up with some liquor. I'd like to sip those rich-looking green and yellow expensive drinks, those stage-door Johnny's drink with the opera hats I tasted once with my finger dipped out of that American that had the squirrel talking stamps with father. He had all he could do to keep himself from falling asleep after the last time we took the port and potted meat. It had a fine salty taste. Yes, because I felt lovely and tired myself and fell asleep as sound as a top. The moment I popped straight into bed till the thunder woke me up. God be merciful to us, I thought. The heavens were coming down about us to punish us when I blessed myself and said a Hail Mary like those awful thunderbolts in Gibraltar, as if the world was coming to an end, and then they come and tell you there's no God. What would you do? What could you do if it was running and rushing about nothing, only make an act of contrition, the candle I lit that evening in Whitefriars Street Chapel for the month of May? See, it brought its luck, though he'd scoff if he heard.
Because he never goes to church mass or meeting. He says, your soul, you have no soul inside, only gray matter, because he doesn't know what it is to have one. Yes. When I lit the lamp, because he must have come 3 or 4 times with that tremendous big red brute of a thing he has, I thought the vein, or whatever the dickens they call it, was going to burst, though his nose is not so big. After I took off all my things with the blinds down, after my hours dressing and perfuming and combing it like iron, or some kind of a thick crowbar standing all the time. He must have eaten oysters, I think, a few dozen. He was in great singing voice. No, I never in all my life felt anyone had one the size of that to make you feel full up. He must have eaten a whole sheep. After what's the idea making us like that, with a big hole in the middle of us, or like a stallion driving it up into you, because that's all they want out of you, with that determined, vicious look in his eyes. I had to half shut my eyes. Still, he hasn't such a tremendous amount of spunk in him when I made him pull out and do it on me, considering how big it is. So much the better in case any of it wasn't washed out properly the last time I let him finish it in me. Nice invention they made for women for him to get all the pleasure. But if someone gave them a touch of it themselves, they'd know what I went through with Millie. Nobody would believe cutting her teeth too. And me and a Purefoy's husband give us a swing out of your whiskers, filling her up with a child or twins once a year, as regular as the clock, always with a smell of children off her, the one they called Budgers or something like a nigger with a shock of hair on it. Jesus, Jack, the child is a black. The last time I was there, a squad of them falling over one another and bawling, you couldn't hear your ears, supposed to be healthy, not satisfied till they have us swollen out like elephants. Or I don't know what supposing I risked, having another nut off him, though still if he was married, I'm sure he'd have a fine, strong child. But I don't know Poldy has more spunk in him. Yes, that would be awfully jolly. I suppose it was meeting Josie Powell and the funeral and thinking about me and Boylan set him off. Well, he can think what he likes now, if that will do him any good. I know they were spooning a bit. When I came on the scene, he was dancing and sitting out with her the night of Georgina Simpson's housewarming, and then he wanted to ram it down my neck. It was on account of not liking to see her a wallflower. That was why we had the stand-up row over politics. He began it, not me. When he said about our Lord being a carpenter, at least he made me cry. Of course, a woman is so sensitive about everything. I was fuming with myself after, for giving in only, for I knew he was gone on me. And the first socialist he said he annoyed me so much. I couldn't put him into a temper. Still, he knows a lot of mixed up things, especially about the body. And inside, I often wanted to study up that myself, what we have inside us in that family physician. I could always hear his voice talking when the room was crowded and watch him after that. I pretended I had a coolness on with her over him because he used to be a bit on the jealous side whenever he asked me, "Who are you going to?" And I said, "Over to Floey," and he made me the present of Lord Byron's poems and the 3 pairs of gloves, so that I finished that I could quite easily get him to make it up any time. I know how I'd even supposing he got in with her again and was going out to see her somewhere. I'd know if he refused to eat the onions. I know plenty of ways. Ask him to tuck down the collar of my blouse or touch him with my veil and gloves on going out.
One kiss, then would send them all spinning, however all right. Well, see then, let him go to her. She, of course, would only be too delighted to pretend she's mad in love with him. That I wouldn't so much mind. I'd just go to her and ask her, do you love him? And look her square in the eyes. She couldn't fool me, but he might. Imagine he was, and make a declaration to her with his blabbery kind of manner, like he did to me, though I had the devil's own job to get it out of him. Though I liked him for that. It showed he could hold in, and wasn't to be got for the asking he was on the pop of asking me too the night in the kitchen. I was rolling the potato cake. There's something I want to say to you only, for I put him off, letting on. I was in a temper with my hands and arms full of pasty flour. In any case, I let out too much the night before talking of dreams. So I didn't want to let him know more than was good for him. She used to be always in praising me, Josie, whenever he was there, meaning him, of course, gloaming me over. And when I said I washed up and down as far as possible, asking me, and did you wash possibly the women are always egging on that putting it on thick when he's there, they know by his sly eye blinking a bit, putting on the indifferent when they come out with something the kind he is, what spoils him. I don't wonder in the least, because he was very handsome at the time, trying to look like Lord Byron. I said I liked, though he was too beautiful for a man, and he was a little before we got engaged. Afterwards, though she didn't like it so much the day I was in the fits of laughing, with the giggles, I couldn't stop about all my hairpins falling out one after another. With a mass of hair I had. You're always in great humour, she said. Yes, because it crickled her, because she knew what it meant, because I used to tell her a good bit of what went on between us. Not all, but just enough to make her mouth water. But that wasn't my fault. She didn't darken the door much after we were married. I wonder what she's got like now, after living with that dotty husband of hers. She had her face beginning to look drawn and run down the last time I saw her. She must have been just after a row with him, because I saw on the moment she was edging to draw down a conversation about husbands and talk about him, to run him down. What was it she told me? Oh, yes, that sometimes he used to go to bed with his muddy boots on when the maggot takes him. Just imagine having to get into bed with a thing like that. Might murder you any moment. What a man. Well, it's not that one way everyone goes mad. Poldy, anyhow, whatever he does, always wipes his feet on the mat when he comes in wet or shine, and always blacks his own boots too. And he always takes off his hat when he comes up in the street like then. And now he's going about in his slipper to look for 10,000 pounds for a postcard. You pee up, oh sweetheart May. Wouldn't a thing like that simply bore you stiff to extinction?
Actually, too stupid even to take his boots off now. What could you make of a man like that? I'd rather die 20 times over than marry another of their sex. Of course, he'd never find another woman like me to put up with him the way I do. Know me, come sleep with me. Yes, and he knows that too, at the bottom of his heart. Take that, Mrs. Maybrick, that poisoned her husband. For what I wonder. In love with some other man, yes, it was found out on her. Wasn't she that downright villain to go and do a thing like that? Of course, some men can be dreadfully aggravating, drive you mad, and always the worst word in the world. What do they ask us? To marry them? For if we're so bad as all that comes to, yes, because they can't get on without us. White arsenic she put in his tea, off flypaper, wasn't it? I wonder why they call it that. If I asked him, he'd say it's from the Greek. Leave us as wise as we were before she must have been madly in love with the other fellow to run the chance of being hanged. Oh, she didn't care if that was her nature. What could she do? Besides, they're not brutes enough to go and hang a woman, surely, are they? They're all so different. Boylan talking about the shape of my foot. He noticed that once, even before he was introduced when I was in the DPC with Poldy, laughing and trying to listen. I was waggling my foot. We both ordered 2 teas and plain bread and butter. I saw him looking with his 2 old maids of sisters when I stood up and asked the girl where it was, what do I care with it, dropping out of me and that black closet breeches. He made me buy, takes you half an hour to let them down, wetting all myself, always with some brand new fad every other week. Such a long one, I did. I forgot my suit gloves on the seat behind, then I never got after. Some robber of a woman, and he wanted me to put it in the Irish Times, lost in the ladies' lavatory, DBC. Dame Street Finder, returned to Mrs. Marion Bloom, and I saw his eyes on my feet, going out through the turning door. He was looking when I looked back, and I went there for tea 2 days after in the hope. But he wasn't now. How did that excite him? Because I was crossing them when we were in the other room. First he meant the shoes that are too tight to walk in. My hand is nice like that. If I only had a ring with the stone for my month, a nice aquamarine, I'll stick him for one, and a gold bracelet. I don't like my food so much. I still made him spend once with my food the night after Goodwin's bookshop of a concert. So cold and windy. It was well. We had that rum in the house to mull, and the fire wasn't black out when he asked to take off my stockings, lying on the hearthrug in Lombard Street West. And another time it was my muddy boots he'd like me to walk in, all the horses' dung I could find, but of course he's not natural like the rest of the world. What did he say? I could give 9 points in 10 to Caddy Lanner and beat her.
What does that mean? I asked him. I forget what he said because the stop press edition just passed. And the man with the curly hair in the Lukandary, that's so polite. I think I saw his face before somewhere. I noticed him when I was tasting the butter. So I took my time, Bartell Darcy, too, that he used to make fun of when he commenced kissing me on the choir stairs after I sang Gounod's Ave Maria. What are we waiting for? Oh, my heart kissed me straight on the brow. And part, which is my brown part, he was pretty hot for all his chinny voice, too. My low notes, he was always raving about. If you can believe him, I liked the way he used his mouth, singing. Then he said, wasn't it terrible to do that there, in a place like that? I don't see anything so terrible about it. I'll tell him about that some day, not now, and surprise him, eh? And I'll take him there and show him the very place too. We did it, so now there you are. Like it or lump it, he thinks nothing can happen without him knowing. He hadn't an idea about my mother till we were engaged. Otherwise, he'd never have got me so cheap as he did. He was 10 times worse himself. Anyhow, begging me to give him a tiny bit cut off my drawers. That was the evening coming along Kenilworth Square. He kissed me in the eye of my glove, and I had to take it off, asking me questions. Is it permitted to inquire the shape of my bedroom? So I let him keep it, as if I forgot it, to think of me when I saw him slip it into his pocket. Of course, he's mad on the subject of drawers. That's plain to be seen, always keezing at those brazen-faced things on the bicycles with their skirts blowing up to their navels, even when Milly and I were out with him at the open-air fete. That one in the cream muslin, standing right against the sun so he could see every atom she had on. When he saw me from behind, following in the rain, I saw him before he saw me, however, standing at the corner of the Harold's Cross Road with a new raincoat on, him with the muffler in the Zingari colors to show off his complexion, and the brown hat looking sly boots as usual, what he was doing there where he'd no business. They can go and get whatever they like from anything at all with a skirt on it, and we're not to ask any questions, but they want to know, where were you? Where are you going? I could feel him coming along, skulking after me, his eyes on my neck. He had been keeping away from the house. He felt it was getting too warm for him, so I half turned and stopped. Then he pestered me to say yes, till I took off my glove, slowly watching him. He said my open work sleeves were too cold for the rain, anything for an excuse to put his hand anear me. Drawers, drawers, the whole blessed time, till I promised to give him the pair of my doll to carry about in his waistcoat pocket. Oh, Maria Santissima, he did look a big fool dripping in the rain. Splendid set of teeth he had. Made me hungry to look at them, and beseeched of me to lift the orange petticoat I had on, with the sunray pleats, that there was nobody, he said, he'd kneel down in the wet if I didn't so persevering. He would too, and ruin his new raincoat. You never know what freak they'd take along with you, they're so savage for it. If anyone was passing, so I lifted them a bit and touched his trousers outside the way I used to gardener after with my ring hand to keep him from doing worse where it was too public. I was dying to find out if he was circumcised. He was shaking like a jelly all over. They want to do everything too quick, take all the pleasure out of it, and father waiting all the time for his dinner. He told me to say I left my purse in the butcher's and had to go back for it. What a deceiver. Then he wrote me that letter with all those words in it. How could he have the face to any woman after his company manners, making it so awkward after when we met, asking me, have I offended you with my eyelids down? Of course he saw I wasn't. He had a few brains, not like that other fool, Henny Doyle. He was always breaking or tearing something in the charades. I hate an unlucky man, and if I knew what it meant, of course I had to say no, for form's sake. Don't understand you, I said, and wasn't it natural? So it is, of course. It used to be written up with a picture of a woman's on that wall in Gibraltar, with that word I couldn't find anywhere, only for children, seeing it too young, then writing every morning a letter, sometimes twice a day. I liked the way he made love. Then he knew the way to take a woman when he sent me the 8 big poppies, because mine was the 8. Then I wrote the night he kissed my heart at Dolphin's barn.
I couldn't describe it simply. It makes you feel like nothing on earth. But he never knew how to embrace well, like Gardner. I hope he'll come on Monday, as he said, at the same time, for I hate people who come at all hours, answer the door you think it's the vegetables. Then it's somebody, and you and you all undressed, or the door of the filthy sloppy kitchen blows open the day old frosty-faced Goodwin called about the concert in Lombard Street, and I just, after dinner, all flushed and tossed with boiling old stew. Don't look at me, Professor. I had to say I'm a fright, yes. But he was a real old gent in his way. It was impossible to be more respectful. Nobody to say you're out. You have to peep out through the blind, like the messenger boy today. I thought I was a put-off first him sending the port and the peaches first, and I was just beginning to yawn with the nerves, thinking he was trying to make a fool of me, when I knew his tat-tat-tat-tat at the door. He must have been a bit late, because I was 1/4 after 3 when I saw the two Daedalus girls coming from school. I never know the time, even. That watch he gave me never seems to go properly. I'd want to get it looked after. When I threw the penny to that lame sailor for England, home, and beauty, when I was whistling there, is a charming girl I love, and I hadn't even put on my clean shift or powdered myself, or a thing. Then this day, week, where to go to Belfast. Just as well he has to go to Ennis, his father's anniversary, the 27th. It wouldn't be pleasant if he did. Suppose our rooms at the hotel were beside each other. And any fooling went on. In the new bed I couldn't tell him to stop and not bother me with him in the next room. Or perhaps some Protestant clergyman with a cough knocking on the wall. Then he'd never believe the next day we didn't do something. It's all very well, a husband, but you can't fool a lover. After me telling him we never did anything, of course. Of course he didn't believe me. No, it's better. He's going where he is. Besides, something always happens with him. The time going to the Mallow concert at Maryborough's, ordering the boiling soup for the two of us. And then the bell rang out. He walks down the platform with the soup splashing about, taking spoonfuls of it. Hadn't he the nerve, and the waiter after him making a holy show of us screeching and confusion for the engine to start? But he wouldn't pay till he's finished. If the two gentlemen in the third-class carriage said he was quite right, so he was too so pig-headed sometimes when he gets a thing into his head. A good job. He was able to open the carriage door with his knife. They had taken us to Cork. I suppose that was done out of revenge on him. Oh, I loved jaunting in a train or a car with the lovely soft cushions. I wonder will he take a first class for me? He might. Want to do it in a train by tipping the guard. Well, oh, I suppose there'll be the usual idiots of men gaping at us, with their eyes as stupid as ever they could possibly be. That was an exceptional man, that common workman that left us alone in the carriage.
That day, going to Howth, I'd like to find out something about him. 1 or 2 tunnels, perhaps, then you have to look out of the window. All the nicer then. Coming back, suppose I never came back. What would they say? Eloped with him? That gets you on the stage. The last concert I sang at, where it's over a year ago. When was it? St. Teresa's Hall, Clarendon. St. Little chits of misses they have now singing Kathleen Kearney and her like on account of father being in the army, and my singing The Absent-Minded Beggar and wearing a brooch for Lord Roberts, when I had the map of it all, and Poldy not Irish enough. Was it him managed it this time? I wouldn't put it past him like he got me on to sing in the Stabat Mater by going around saying he was putting lead kindly light to music. I put him up to that till the Jesuits found out he was a Freemason thumping the piano lead. Thomion copied from some old opera. Yes, and he was going about with some of them, Sinn Fein lately, or whatever they call themselves. talking his usual trash and nonsense. He says that little man he showed me, without the neck, is very intelligent. The coming man, Griffiths. Is he? Well, he doesn't look it, that's all I can say. Still, it must have been him. He knew there was a boycott, I hate the mention of their politics, after the war, that Pretoria and Ladysmith and Bloemfontein were the Gardner, Lute Stanley, G. 8th, BN 2nd, East Langs of enteric fever. He was a lovely fellow in khaki, and just the right height over me. I'm sure he was brave too. He said I was lovely. The evening we kissed goodbye at the canal. Look, my Irish beauty. He was pale with excitement about going away or wet, be seen from the road. He couldn't stand properly, and I, so hot as I never felt. They could have made their peace in the beginning, or old Paul, and the rest of the other old Krugers go and fight it out between them, instead of dragging on for years, killing any fine-looking men there were with their fever. If he was even decently shot, it wouldn't have been so bad. I love to see a regiment pass in review. The first time I saw the Spanish cavalry at La Roque, it was lovely after looking across the bay from Algeciras. All the lights of the rock, like fireflies, or those sham battles on the 15 acres, the Black Watch, with their kilts in time at the march, past the 10th Hussars, the Prince of Wales' own, or the Lancers. Oh, the Lancers, they're grand. Or the Duplins that won Tugela. His father made his money over selling the horses for the cavalry. Well, he could buy me a nice present up in Belfast after what I gave him. They've lovely linen up there, or one of those nice kimono things. I must buy a mothball like I had before to keep up in the drawer with them. It would be exciting going round with him shopping, buying those nice things in a new city. Better leave this ring behind. Want to keep turning and turning to get it over the knuckle there. Or they might bell it round the town in their papers, or tell the police on me, but they think we're married.
Oh, let them all go and smother themselves for the fat lot I care. He has plenty of money and he's not a marrying man, so somebody better get it out of him. If I could find out whether he likes me, I looked a bit washy. Of course, when I looked close in the hand glass powdering, a mirror never gives you the expression besides scrooching down on me like that all the time with his big hip bones. He's heavy too with his hairy chest for this heat, always having to lie down for them. Better for him put it into me from behind, the way Mrs. Mastiansky told me her husband made her like the dogs do it and stick out her tongue as far as ever she could, and he's so quiet and mild with his ting either. Can you ever be up to men the way it takes them lovely stuff in that blue suit he had on, and stylish tie and socks with the sky blue silk things on them? He's certainly well off, I know, by the cut his clothes have and his heavy watch, but he was like a perfect devil for a few minutes after he came back with the stockers tearing up the tickets and swearing blazes because he lost 20 quid. He said he lost over than outsider, that 1.5 he put on for me on account of Lenehan's tip, cursing him to the lowest pits that sponger he was making free with me after the Glentree dinner, coming back that long jaunt over the featherbed mountain after the Lord Mayor looking at me with his dirty eyes. Val Dillon, that big head, I first noticed him at Desert when I was cracking the nuts with my teeth. I wished I could have picked every morsel of that chicken out of my fingers. It was so tasty and browned and as tender as anything. Only for I didn't want to eat everything on my plate, those forks and fish slices were hallmarked silver too. I wish I had some. I could easily have slipped a couple into my muff when I was playing with them, then always hanging out them for money in a restaurant for the bit you put down your throat. We have to be thankful for our mangy cup of tea itself as a great compliment to be noticed the way the world is divided in any case. If it's going to go on, I want at least two other good chemises for one thing, and but don't know what kind of drawers he likes. None at all, I think. Didn't he say yes? And half the girls in Gibraltar never wrote them either naked ass.
As God made them. That Andalusian singing, her Manula, she didn't make much secret of what she hadn't. Yes. And the second pair of silked stockings is laddered after one day's wear. I could have brought them back to Lewis this morning and kicked up a row, and made that one change them only not to upset myself and run the risk of walking into him and ruining the whole thing. And one of those good-fitting corsets I'd want advertised cheap in the Gentlewoman with elastic gauze on the hips. He saved the one I have, but that's no good. What did they say? They give a delightful figure line, 11 out of 6, obviating that unsightly broad appearance across a lower back to reduce flesh my belly is a bit too big. I have to knock off the stout at dinner, or am I getting too fond of it? The last they sent from O'Rourke's was as flat as a pancake. He makes his money easy, Larry. They call him the old mangry parcel. He sent an Xmas a cottage cake and a bottle of Hogwash. He tried to palm off as a claret that he couldn't get anyone to drink. God, spare his spit for a fear. He'd die out of the drought. Or I must do a few breathing exercises, I wonder. Is that the anti-fat any good? Might overdo it. The thin ones are not so much the fashion now. Garters. That much I have the violet pair I wore today. That's all he bought me, out of the check he got on the first. Oh, no, there was the face lotion. I finished the last of yesterday, and that made my skin like new. I told him, over and over again, get that made up in the same place, and don't forget it. God only knows whether he did, after all, I said to him. I know by the bottle, anyway. If not, I suppose I only have to wash in my piss, like beef tea or chicken soup, with some of that opoponax and violet. I thought it was beginning to look coarse or old a bit. The skin underneath is much finer, where it peeled off, there on my finger after the burn. It's a pity isn't all like that. And the 4 paltry handkerchiefs, about 6, in all sure you can't get on in this world without style, all going in food and rent. When I get I'll lash it around, and I tell you, in fine style, I always want to throw a handful of tea into the pot, in measuring and mincing, if I buy a pair of old brogues itself. Do you like those new shoes? Yes. How much were they? I have no clothes at all. The brown any woman cutting up this old hat and patching up the other. The men won't look at you, and women try to walk on you because they know you've no man. Then with all the things dearer every day for the 4 years, more have of life up to 35. No, I'm what I am at all, and I'll be 33 in September. Will I? What? Oh well. Look at the Mrs. Galbraith. She's much older than me. I saw her when I was out last week. Her beauty is on the wane. She was a lovely woman, magnificent head of hair on her down to her waist, tossing it back like Kitty O'Shea in Grantham Street. First thing I did every morning to look across to see her combing it, as if she loved it, and was full of pity. I only got to know her the day before we left.
And that Mrs. Langtry, the Jersey Lily, the Prince of Wales, was in love with. I suppose he's like the first man going the roads, only for the name of a king. They're all made the one way. Only a black man's I'd like to try a beauty up to what was she? 45? There was some funny story about the jealous old husband. What was it at all? And an oyster knife he went. No, he made her wear a kind of a tin thing round her. And the Prince of Wales, yes, he had the oyster knife. Can't be true, a thing like that. Some of those books he brings me, the works of Master Francois somebody, supposed to be a priest about a child born out of her ear, because her bum gut fell out a nice word for any priest to write, and her as if any fool wouldn't know what that meant. I hate that pretending of all things with that old blackguard's face on him. Anybody can see it's not true. And that ruby and fair Terence he brought me, that twice I remember when I came to page 50, the part about where she hangs him up out of a hook with a cord flagellate. Sure, there's nothing for a woman in that all invention made up about he drinking the champagne out of her slipper after the ball was over, like the infant Jesus in the crypt at Inchicore in the Blessed Virgin's arms. Sure, no woman could have a child that big taken out of her, and I thought first it came out of her side, because how could she go to the chamber when she wanted to? And she a rich lady, of course, she felt honored. HRH he was in Gibraltar, the year I was born. I bet he found lilies there too, where he planted the tree. He planted more than that in his time. He might have planted me too if he'd come a bit sooner then. Then I wouldn't be here as I am. He ought to chuck that Freeman with the paltry few shillings he knocks out of it and go into an office or something, where he'd get regular pay, or a bank, where they could put him up on a throne to count the money all the day. Of course he prefers plottering about the house, so you can't stir with him any side. What's your program today? I wish he'd even smoke a pipe like father to get the smell of a man, or pretending to be mooching about for advertisements, when he could have been in Mr. Cuff's, still only for what he did then, sending me to try and patch it up. I could have got him promoted there to be the manager. He gave me a great mirada once or twice. First he was as stiff as the mischief, really, and truly Mrs. Bloom. Only I felt rotten, simply with the old rubbishy dress that I lost the leads out of the tails, with no cut in it. But they're coming into fashion again. I bought it simply to please him. I know it was no good by the finish. Pity I changed my mind of going to Todd and Burns, as I said, and not Lee's. It was just like the shop itself. Rummage, sale a lot of trash. I hate those rich shops. Get on your nerves. Nothing kills me altogether. Only he thinks he knows a great lot about a woman's dress and cooking methering. Everything he can scour off the shelves into it. If I went by his advices, every blessed hat I put on, does that suit me? Yes. Take that. That's all right. The one like a wedding cake standing up miles off my head, he said, suited me. Or the dish cover, one coming down on my backside on pins and needles, about the shop girl in that place in Grafton Street. I had the misfortune to bring him into, and she as insolent as ever. She could be with him. Her smirk, saying I'm afraid we're giving you too much trouble. What she's there for? But I stared it out of her. Yes, he was awfully stiff, and no wonder, but he changed the second time he looked poldy, pig-headed as usual, like the soup. But I could see him looking very hard at my chest when he stood up to open the door for me. It was nice of him to show me out in any case. I'm
extremely sorry, Mrs. Bloom. Believe me, without making it too marked, the first time after him being insulted, and me being supposed to be his wife, I just half smiled. I know my chest was out that way at the door when he said, I'm extremely sorry. And I'm sure you were. Yes, I think he made them a bit firmer, sucking them like that so long he made me thirsty. Titties, he calls them. I had to laugh, yes, this one anyhow stiff. The nipple gets for the least thing I'll get him to keep that up, and I'll take those eggs beaten up with muscle, fatten them out for him. What are all those veins and things? Curious the way it's made too, the same in case of twins. They are supposed to represent beauty placed up. They're like those statues in the museum. One of them pretending to hide it with her hand. Are they so beautiful, of course, compared with what a man looks like with his two backs full and his other thing hanging down out of him or sticking up at you like a hat rack? No wonder they hide it with a kappa leaf. That disgusting Cameron Highlander behind the meat marker, or that other wretch with the red head behind the tree, where the statue of the fish used to be when I was passing, pretending he was pissing, standing out for me to see it with his baby clothes up to one side. The queen's own, they were a nice lot. It's well, the stories relieved them. They are always trying to show it to you every time, nearly. I passed outside the men's greenhouse near the Harcourt Street station just to try some fellow or other trying to catch my eye as if it was eye of the seven wonders of the world. Oh, and the stink of those rotten places. The night coming home with Poldy after the Comerfords party oranges and lemonade to make you feel nice and watery. I went into one of them. It was so biting cold. I couldn't keep it. When was that? 93. The canal was frozen. Yes, it was a few months after. A pity a couple of the Camerons weren't there to see me squatting in the men's place mid-row. I tried to draw a picture of it before I tore it up like a sausage or something. I wonder they are not afraid going about of getting a kick or a bang of something. There, the woman is beauty, of course, that's admitted. When he said I could pose for a picture naked to some rich fellow in Hall Street, when he lost the job in Haley's, and I was selling the clothes and strumming in the coffee palace, would I be like that bath of the nymph with my hair down? Yes, only she's younger, or I'm a little like that dirty bitch. In that Spanish photo, he has nymphs used, they go about like that. I asked him about her, and that word meant something with hoses in it, and he came out with some jawbreakers about the incarnation he never can explain. A thing simply the way a body can understand. Then he goes and burns the bottom out of the pan of all for his kidney. This one, not so much. There's the mark of his teeth still where he tried to bite the nipple. I had to scream out, aren't they fearful trying to hurt you? I had a great breast of milk with Millie enough for two what was the reason or what he said. I could have got £1 a week as a wet nurse. All swelled out the morning. That delicate-looking student that stopped in No 28 with the citrus penrose nearly caught me washing through the window, only for I snapped up the towel to my face. That was his studenting hurt me. They used to weaning her till he got Dr. Brady to give me the belladonna prescription. I had to get him to suck them. They were so hard. He said it was sweeter and thicker than the cows. Then he wanted to milk me into the tea. Well, he's beyond everything. I declare somebody ought to put him in the budget. If I only could remember the I half of the things and write a book out of it, the works of Master Poldy. Yes, and it's so much smoother. The skin much an hour. He was at them, I'm sure, by the clock, like some kind of big infant. I had at me they want everything in their mouth, all the pleasure those men get out of a woman. I can feel his mouth. Oh Lord, I must stretch myself. I wished he was here, or somebody to let myself go with and come again, like that I feel all fire inside me, or if I could dream it when he made me spend the second time tickling me behind with his finger. I was coming for about 5 minutes. With my legs round him, I had to hug him after. Oh Lord, I wanted to shout out all sort of things, fuck or shit or anything at all, only not to look ugly, or those lines from the strain. Who knows the way head? Take it you want to feel your way with a man. They are not all like him, thank God. Some of them want you to be so nice about it. I noticed the contrast. He does it and doesn't talk it. Talk I gave my eyes that look with my hair a bit loose from the tumbling and my tongue between my lips up to him and savage brood Thursday, Friday, one Saturday, two Sunday, three, oh Lord, I can't wait till Monday.
Free from train somewhere, whistling at the strength those engines have in them, like big giants, and the water rolling all over and out of them all sides, like the end of loaves. Old sweet song, the poor men that have to be out all the night from their wives and families and those roasting engines. Stifling it was today. I'm glad I burned the half of those old Freemans and photo bits, leaving things like that lying about. He's getting very careless. And threw the rest of them up in the WC. I'll get in the cotton tomorrow for me instead of having them there for the next year to get a few pence for them. Have him asking where's last January's paper and all those old overcoats I bundled out of the hall, making the place hotter than it is. That rain was lovely and refreshing just after my beauty sleep. I thought I was going to get like a Gibraltar. My goodness, the heat there before the Levanter came on, black as night, and the glare of the rocks standing up in it like a big giant. Compared with their free rock mountain, they think is so great, with the red sentries here and there, the poplars, and they all white hot, and the smell of the rainwater in those tanks, watching the sun all the time, weltering down on you, faded. All that lovely Frog Father's friend Mrs. Stanhope sent me from the B. Marsh, Paris. What a shame, my dear Stoggerina, she wrote on it. She was very nice. What's this? Her other name was just a PC to tell you. I sent the little present. Have just had a jolly warm bath and feel a very clean dog now. Enjoyed it. Wogger, she called him. Wogger. Give him anything to be back in Jib. and hear you sing Waiting and in Old Mandarin Concone is the name of those exercises he bought me. He bought me one of those new some word I couldn't make out, shawls, amusing things. But they're terrible, these things. Still, they're lovely, I think. Don't you? We'll always think of the lovely teas we had together, scrumptious currant scones and raspberry wafers. I adore. Well now, dearest Doggerina, be sure and write soon. Kind, she left out regards to your father. Also Captain Grove with love, yours aptly, Hester, XXXXX. She didn't look a bit married, just like a girl. He was years older than her. Wogger. He was awfully fond of me when he held down the wire with his foot for me to step over at the bullfight at La Linea, where the Matador Gomez was given the bull's ear. These clothes we have to wear, whoever invented them, expecting you to walk up Killing a Hill then, for example, at the picnic, all staged up. You can't do a blessed thing in them in a crowd run or jump out of the way. That's why I was afraid when that other ferocious old bull began to charge the banderilleros with the sashes and the two things in their hats, and the brutes of men shouting "Bravo, Toro!" Sure, the women were as bad in their nice white mantillas, ripping all the whole insides out of those poor horses. I never heard of such a thing in all my life. Yes, he used to break his heart at me, taking off the dog, barking in Bell Lane. Poor brute. And it's sick. What became of them, ever? I suppose they're dead long ago, the two of them. It's like all through a mist. Makes you feel so old. I made the scones, of course. I had everything all to myself. Then a girl, Hester. We used to compare our hair. Mine was thicker than hers. She showed me how to settle it at the back when I put it up.
And what says else how to make a knot on a thread with the one hand? We were like cousins. What age was I then, the night of the storm? I slept in her bed. She had her arms round me then. We were fighting in the morning with a pillow. What fun. He was watching me whenever he got an opportunity at the band of the Alameda Esplanade when I was with father and Captain Grove. I looked up at the church first, and then at the windows and down, and our eyes met. I felt something go through me like all needles. My eyes were dancing, I remember, after, when I looked at myself in the glass, hardly recognized myself, the change. He was attractive to a girl, in spite of his being a little bald, intelligent-looking, disappointed, and gay at the same time. He was like Thomas in the shadow of Ashley Diat. I had a splendid skin from the sun and the excitement like a rose. I didn't get a wink of sleep. It wouldn't have been nice on account of her, but I could have stopped it in time. She gave me The Moonstone to read. That was the first I read of Wilkie Collins, East Lynne. East Lynne I read, and The Shadow of Ashley Diat, Mrs. Henry Wood, Henry Dunbar, by that other woman I lent him afterwards, with Mulvey's photo in it. So as he see, I wasn't without, and Lord Lytton Eugene Aramoli born, she gave me, by Mrs. Hungerford, on account of the name. I don't like books with a Molly in them, like that one he brought me about the one from Flanders. A whore, always shoplifting anything she could cloth and stuff and yards of it. Oh, this blanket is too heavy on me. That's better. I haven't even one decent night dress. This thing gets all rolled under me besides him, and he's fooling. That's better. I used to be weltering then, in the heat. My shift drenched with the sweat stuck in the cheeks of my bottom, on the chair, when I stood up. They were so fattish and firm when I got up on the sofa cushions to see with my clothes up, and the bucks' tons of them at night, at the mosquito nets. I couldn't read a line, Lord. Lord, how long ago it seems. Centuries, of course. They never came back. And she didn't put her address right on it. Either she may have noticed her Walker people were always going away, and we never. I remember that day with the waves and the boats with their high heads rocking and the smell of ship, those officers' uniforms on shore. Leave made me seasick. He didn't say anything. He was very serious. I had the high-buttoned boots on, and my skirt was blowing. She kissed me 6 or 7 times. Didn't I cry? Yes, I believe I did. Or near it, my lips were tattering when I said goodbye. She had a gorgeous wrap of some special kind of blue collar of her for the voyage, made very peculiarly to one side like, and it was extremely pretty. It got as dull as the devil after they went. I was almost planning to run away, mad, out of it somewhere. We're never easy where we are. Father or aunt or marriage, waiting, always waiting to guide him to me. Waiting, no speed, his flying feet, their damn guns bursting and booming all over the shop, especially the Queen's birthday, and throwing everything down in all directions if you didn't open the windows, when General Ulysses Grant, whoever he was or did supposed to be, some great fellow, landed off the ship, and old Sprague, the consul that was there from before the flood, dressed up. Poor man. And he, in mourning for the sun, that same old buckles for reveal in the morning, and drums rolling, and the unfortunate poor devils of soldiers, walking about with mess tins, smelling the place, more than the old long-bearded Jews in the Jellybees and Levitt's assembly, and sound clear and gunfire for the men to cross the lines, and the warden marching with his keys to lock the gates and the bagpipes, and only Captain Groves and father talking about Rogue Stripped and Plevna, and Sir Garnet Wolseley and Gordon at Cartham lighting their pipes for them every time they went out. Drunken old devil with his grog on the window-sill. Catch him, leaving any of it picking his nose, trying to think of some other dirty story to tell up in a corner. But he never forgot himself. When I was there, sending me out of the room on some blind excuse, paying his compliments, the Bushmills, whiskey talking of course, but he'd do the same to the next woman that came along, I suppose. I suppose he died of galloping drink ages ago, the days like years, not a letter from a living soul except the odd few I posted to myself with bits of paper in them, so bored sometimes I couldn't fight with my nails, listening to that old Arab.
Listening to that old Arab with the one eye, and he's of an instrument singing his here. All my compliments on your hodgepodge of your he's as bad as now, with the hands hanging off me, looking out of the window. If there was a nice fellow even in the opposite house, that medical in Hall's Street, the nurse was after when I put on my gloves and hat at the window to show I was going out. Not a notion what I meant, aunt. They think never understand what you say, even you'd want to print it up on a big poster for them, not even if you shake hands twice with the left. He didn't recognize me either when I half frowned at him outside Westland Road Chapel, whereas they great intelligence come in. I'd like to know grey matter. They have it all in their tail, if you ask me, those country Gogers up in the city arms. Intelligence, they had a damn sight less than the bulls and cows they were selling, the meat and the coalman's bell, that noisy bugger's trying to swindle me with the wrong bill he took out of his hat. What a pair of paws and pots and pans and kettles to mend any broken bottles for a poor man today, and no visitors or post ever except his checks or some advertisement like that wonder worker. They sent him addressed, "Dear Madam," only his letter and the card from Millie this morning. She wrote a letter to him. Who did I get the last letter from? Oh, Mrs. Twyn. Now, what possessed her to write from Canada after so many years to know the receipt I had for Pisto Madrileno Flowey Dillon, since she wrote to say she was married to a very rich architect. If I'm to believe all I hear, with a villa and 8 rooms, her father was an awfully nice man. He was near 70, always good humored. Well, now, Miss Tweedy or Miss Gillespie, there's the pioneer. That was a solid silver coffee service. He had 2 on the mahogany sideboard, then dying so far away. I hate people that have always their poor story to tell. Everybody has their own troubles. That poor Nancy Blake died a month ago of acute pneumonia. Well, I didn't know her so well as all that she was Floyd's friend, more than mine. Poor Nancy. It's a bother having to answer. He always tell me the wrong things and no stops to say, like making a speech, your sad, bereavement, sympathy. I always make that mistake, and nephew with 2 doubles, yours in. I hope he'll write me a longer letter the next time if it's a thing he really likes me. Oh, thanks be to the great God, I got somebody to give me what I badly wanted, to put some heart up into me. You've no chances at all in this place, like you used long, long ago. I wish somebody would write me a love letter. His wasn't much, and I told him he could write what he liked. Yours ever, Hugh Bolan, in Old Madrid. Stuffed silly women believe love is sighing. I am dying still if he wrote it. I suppose there'd be some truth in it. True or no, it fills up your whole day. And life always something to think about every moment, and see it all round you like a new world. I could write the answer in bed, to let him imagine me short, just a few words, not those long rushed letters Atty Dillon used to write to the fellow that was something in the forecourts, that jilted her after out of the lady's letter writer. When I told her to say a few simple words, he could twist how he liked, not acting with precipitancy, with equal candor, the greatest earthly happiness. Answer to a gentleman's proposal affirmatively. My goodness, there's nothing else. It's all very fine for them, but as for being a woman, as soon as you are old, they might as well throw you out in the bottom of the asphyt.
Mulvis was the first and was in bed that morning, and Mrs. Rubio brought it in with the coffee. She stood there standing when I asked her to hand me, and I pointing at them. I couldn't think of the word, a hairpin, to open it with. Ah, Okilia, disobliging old thing. And it's staring her in the face, with a switch of false hair on her, and vain about her appearance, ugly as she was, near 80 or 100, her face a mass of wrinkles, with all her religion domineering, because she never could get over the Atlantic fleet coming in. Half the ships of the world, and the Union Jack flying with all her carabineros, because 4 drunken English sailors took all the rock from them, and because I didn't run into mass often enough in Santa Maria to please her with her shawl up on her, except where there was a marriage on, with all her miracles of the saints, and her black blessed Virgin with a silver dress, and the sun dancing 3 times on Easter Sunday morning, and when the priest was going by with the bell, bringing the Vatican to the dying, blessing herself for his majestat, an admirer, he signed it. I near jumped out of my skin. I wanted to pick him up when I saw him following me out of the Calle Real in the shop window. Then he tipped me just in passing, but I never thought he'd write. Making an appointment, I had it inside my petticoat bodice all day, reading it up in every hole and corner, while father was up at the drill, instructing to find out by the handwriting or the language of stamps, singing, I remember, "Shall I wear a white rose?" And I wanted to put on the old stupid clock to near the time he was the first man kissed me under the Moorish wall. My sweetheart. When a boy, it never entered my head what kissing meant till he put his tongue in my mouth. His mouth was sweet like. Young, I put my knee up to him a few times to learn the way. What did I tell him? I was engaged for fun to the son of a Spanish nobleman named Don Miguel de la Flora, and he believed me that I was to be married to him in 3 years' time. There's many a true word spoken in jest. There is a flower that bloometh. A few things I told him true about myself, just for him to be imagining the Spanish girls he didn't like. I suppose one of them wouldn't give him. I got him excited. He crushed all the flowers on my bosom. He couldn't count the pesetas and the peragordas till I taught him Capuchin. He came from, he said, of the Black Water, but it was too short then. The day before he left, May, yes it was, May, when the infant king of Spain was born. I'm always like that in the spring. I'd like a new fellow every year up on the tip-top, under the rock garden near O'Hara's Tower. I told him it was struck by lightning, and all about the old Barbary apes they sent to Clapham without a tail, careering all over the show on each other's back. Mrs. Rubio said she was a regular old rock scorpion, robbing the chickens out of Ince's farm, and throw stones at you if you went near. He was looking at me. I had that white blouse on open in the front to encourage him as much as I could without too openly. They were just beginning to be plump. I said I was tired. We lay over the fir tree cove, a wide place. I suppose it must be the highest rock in existence.
The galleries and casemates and those frightful rocks, and St. Michael's Cave with the icicles or whatever they call them hanging down, and ladders, all the mud plotching my boots. I'm sure that's the way down the monkeys go under the sea to Africa. When they die, the ships out far, like chips. That was the Malta boat passing, yes. The sea and the sky, you could do what you liked, lie there. Forever he caressed them outside. They love doing that. It's the roundness there. I was leaning over him with my white rice straw hat to take the newness out of it. The left side of my face, that best my blouse open for his last day, transparent kind of shirt he had. I could see his chest pink. He wanted to touch mine with his for a moment, but I wouldn't let him. He was awfully put out. First for fear, you never know consumption, or leave me with a child, embarazada. That old servant Inez told me that one drop, even if it got into you at all after I tried with the banana, but I was afraid it might break and get lost up in me somewhere, because they once took something down out of a woman that was up there for years, covered with lime salts. They're all mad to get in there. Where they come out of you, you'd think they could never go far enough up, and then they're done with you in a way till the next time, yes, because there's a wonderful feeling there, so tender all the time. How did we finish it off? Yes, oh yes. I pulled him off into my handkerchief, pretending not to be excited, but I opened my legs. I wouldn't let him touch me inside my petticoat, because I had a skirt opening up the side. I tormented the life out of him, first tickling him. I loved rousing that dog in the hotel. Rrrst, a walk, a walk, a walk, his eyes shut and a bird flying below us. He was shy, all the same I liked him. Like that moaning, I made him blush a little when I got over him that way, when I unbuttoned him and took his out and drew back the skin. It had a kind of eye in it. They were all buttons, men down the middle on the wrong side of them. Molly, darling, he called me. What was his name? Jack, Joe, Harry, Mulvey. Was it yes? I think a lieutenant. He was rather fair. He had a laughing kind of a voice, so I went round to the what-you-call-it. Everything was what-you-call-it. Moustache. He said he'd come back. Lord, it's just like yesterday to me. And if I was married, he'd do it to me. And I promised him, yes, faithfully. I'd let him block me now, flying. Perhaps he's dead, or killed, or a captain or admiral. It's nearly 20 years. If I said Fir Tree Cove, he would, if he came up behind me and put his hands over my eyes to guess who I might recognize him. He's young, still about 40. Perhaps he's married some girl on the Blackwater, and is quite changed. They all do. They haven't half the character a woman has. She little knows what I did with her beloved husband before he ever dreamt of her in broad daylight, too. In the sight of the whole world, you might say. They could have put an article about it in the Chronicle. I was a bit wild after, when I blew out the old bag the biscuits were in from Benedy Bros, and exploded it, Lord, with a bang, all the woodcocks and pigeons screaming, coming back the same way that we went over Middle Hill round by the old guardhouse and the Jews' burial place, pretending to read out the Hebrew on them. I wanted to fire his pistol. He said he hadn't one. He didn't know what to make of me with his peak cap on, that he always wore, crooked. As often as I settled it straight, HMS Calypso, swinging my hat, that old bishop that spoke off the altar, his long preach about women's higher functions, about girls now riding the bicycle and wearing peak caps, and the new woman bloomers God send him sense and me more money. I suppose they're called after him. I never thought that would be my name, Bloom. When I used to write it in print to see how it looked on a visiting card, or practicing for the butcher, and oblige M. Bloom. You're looking blooming, Josie, used to say after I married him. Well, it's better than Breen or Briggs. Does Brig, or those awful names with bottom in them, Mrs. Ramsbottom, or some other kind of a bottom Mulvey. I wouldn't go mad about either. Or suppose I divorced him. Mrs. Boylan, my mother, whoever she was, might have given me a nicer name, the Lord knows, after the lovely one. She had Lunita Laredo, the fun we had running along Willis Road to Europa Point, twisting in and out all round the other side of Jersey. They were shaking and dancing about in my blouse like Milly's little ones. Now when she runs up the stairs, I loved looking down at them. I was jumping up at the pepper trees and the white poplars, pulling the leaves off and throwing them at him. He went to India. He was to write the voyages those men have to make to the ends of the world and back. It's the least they might get a squeeze or two at a woman, while they can, going out to be drowned or blown up somewhere. I went up Windmill Hill to the flats that Sunday morning, with Captain Rubio's, that was dead spyglass like the sentry had. He said he'd have one or two from on board. I wore that frock from the B. Marsh Paris, and the coral necklace, the straits shining. I could see over to Morocco, almost the Bay of Tangier, white, and the Atlas Mountain with snow on it, and the straits like a river, so clear. Harry, Molly, darling, I was thinking of him on the sea all the time. After, at Mass, when my petticoat began to slip down at the elevation weeks, and weeks I kept the handkerchiefs under my pillow for the smell of him. There was no decent perfume to be got in that Gibraltar, only that cheap peau d'Espagne that faded and left a stink on you more than anything else. I wanted to give him a memento. He gave me that clumsy clatter ring for luck that I gave Gardner, going to South Africa, where those Boers killed him with their war and fever. But they were all beaten, all at the same. If it brought its bad luck with it like an opal or pearl, still it must have been pure 18-karat gold, because it was very heavy. But what could you get in a place like that? The sandfrog shower from Africa, and that derelict ship that came up to the harbor. Marie, the Marie, what you call it. No, he hadn't a moustache. That was Gardner, yes. I can see his face clean shaven. Franc, that train again, weeping tone once in the dear dead days. Beyond recall, close my eyes, breathe my lips forward, kiss, sad look, eyes open, piano, ear, the world, the miss, begun. I hate that iceberg. Comes, love's sweet song. I'll let that out full when I get in front of the footlights again. Kathleen Kearney and her lot of squealers. Miss this, miss that, miss the other. Lot of sparrow farts skidding around, talking about politics. They know as much about as my backside, anything in the world to make themselves some way interesting. Irish homemade beauties, soldier's daughter, am I, eh? And those are you bootmakers and publicans, I beg your pardon. Coach, I thought you were a wheelbarrow. They'd die down dead off their feet if ever they got a chance of walking down the Alameda. On an officer's arm, like me on the band night, my eyes flash my bust. That they haven't passion, God help their poor head. I knew more about men and life when I was 15 than they'll all know at 50. They don't know how to sing a song like that gardener said no man could look at my mouth and teeth smiling like that and not think of it. I was afraid he mightn't like my accent first. He, so English, all father, left me in spite of his stamps. I've my mother's eyes and figure.
Anyhow, he always said they're so snotty about themselves. Some of those cads. He wasn't a bit like that when he was a dead gone. On my lips. Let them guess a husband first, that's fit to be looked at. And a daughter like mine. Or see if they can excite as well with money. That can pick and choose whoever he wants, like Boylan. To do it 4 or 5 times locked in each other's arms, or the voice, either I could have been a prima donna only I married him, comes love's, oh deep down, chin back. Not too much, make it double, my lady's bower. Is too long for an encore about the moated grange at twilight, and vaunted rooms, yes. I'll sing winds that blow from the south, that he gave after the choir stairs performance. I'll change that lace on my black dress to show off my bobs, and yes, by God, I'll get that big fan mended. Make them burst with envy. My hole is itching me always when I think of him. I feel some wind in me. Better go easy, not wake him. Have him at it again, slobbering after washing every bit of myself back belly and sides, if we had even a bath itself, or my own room. Anyway, I wish he'd sleep in some bed by himself, with his cold feet on me. Give us room, even let to a fart guard, so to the least thing better, yes, hold them like that. A bit on my side piano, quietly sweet, there's that train for far away. Pianissimo, one more song. That was a relief, wherever you let be your wind, go free, for who knows, that pork chop I took with my cup of tea after was quite good. With the heat I couldn't smell anything of it. I'm sure that queer-looking man in the pork butcher's is a great rogue. I hope that lamp is not smoking. Fill my nose up with smuts better than having him leaving the gas on all night. I couldn't rest easy in my bed in Gibraltar after getting up to see why am I so damned nervous about that thought. I like it in the winter, it's more company. Oh Lord, it was rotten cold too. That winter when I was only about 10, was I? Yes, I had the big doll with all the funny clothes dressing her up and undressing, that icy wind skeeting across from those mountains, the something Nevada, Sierra Nevada, standing at the fire with a little bit of a shortsie I had up to heat myself. I loved dancing about it, then make a race back into bed.
I'm sure the fellow opposite used to be there the whole time, watching with the lights out in the summer, and I in my skin hopping around. I used to love myself then, stripped at the washstand, dabbing and creaming. Only when it came to the chamber performance, I put out the light too. So then there were two of us. Goodbye to my sleep for this night, anyhow. I hope he's not going to get in with those medicals leading him astray to imagine he's young again, coming in at 4 in the morning. It must be, if not more. Still, he had the manners not to wake me. What did they find the gabber about all night? Squandering money and getting drunker and drunker. Couldn't they drink water? Then he starts giving us his orders for eggs and tea and Finton Haddie and hot buttered toast. I suppose we'll have him sitting up like the king of the country, pumped with the wrong end of the spoon up and down in his egg, wherever he learned that from. And I love to hear him falling up the stairs of a morning with the cups rattling on the tray, and then play with the cat. She rubs up against you for her own sake. I wonder how she flees. She is as bad as a woman, always licking and lecking, but I hate their claws. I wonder, do they see anything that we can't, staring like that? When she sits at the top of the stairs so long and listening, as I wait, always with a rubber too, that lovely fresh place I bought. I think I'll get a bit of fish tomorrow, or today. Is it Friday? Yes. I will, with some blancmange, with blackcurrant jam, like long ago. Not those 2-pound pots of mixed plum and apple from the London and Newcastle Williams and Woods. Goes twice as far, only for the bones. I hate those eels. Cod, yes. I'll get a nice piece of cod. I'm always getting enough for free, forgetting anyway. I'm sick of that everlasting butcher's meat from Buckley's loin chops and leg beef and rib steak and scrag of mutton and calf's pluck. The very name is enough for a picnic, I suppose. We all gave 5 each, and I'll let him let him pay it and invite some other woman for him, who Mrs. Fleming, and drove out to the Furry Glen or the strawberry beds. We'd have him examining all the horses' toenails first, like he does with letters. No, not with Boylan. There, yes, with some cold veal and ham mixed sandwiches. There are little houses down at the bottom of the banks. There on purpose. But it's as hot as blazes, he says. Not a bank holiday, anyhow. I hate those Rocco Mary Ann call boxes. Out for the day Whit Monday. It's a cursed day, too. No wonder that Bee bit him better the seaside, but I'd never again in this life get into a boat with him. After him at Bray telling the boatman he knew how to row. If anyone asked, could he ride a steeplechase for the Gold Cup, he'd say yes. Then it came on to get rough, the old thing crookeding about, and the weight all down my side telling me pull the right reins now, pull the left, and the tide all swamping in, floods in through the bottom, and his oar slipping out of the stirrup. It's a mercy we weren't all drowned. He can swim, of course. Me, no. There's no danger whatsoever. Keep yourself calm in his flannel trousers. I'd like to have tattered them down off him before all the people and give him what that one calls flagellate, that it was black and blue, do him all the good in the world. Only for the long-nosed chap, I don't know who he is, with that other beauty, Burke out of the City Arms Hotel, was there spying around as usual, on the slip always, where he wasn't wanted. If there was a row and you'd vomit. A better phase, there was no love lost between us. That's one consolation. I wonder what kind is that book he brought me. Sweets of Sin by a gentleman of fashion. Some other Mr. de Kock, I suppose. The people gave him that nickname, going about with his stew from one woman to another.
I couldn't even change my new white shoes, all ruined with the salt water, and the hat I had with that feather all blowy and tossed on me. How annoying and provoking, because the smell of the sea excited me, of course. The sardines and the bream in Catalan Bay. Round the back of the rock they were fine, all silver, and the fishermen's baskets, old Luigi, near 100, they said, came from Genoa, and the tall old chap with the earrings. I don't like a man you have to climb up to get at. I suppose they're all dead and rotten long ago, Besides, I don't like being alone in this big barracks of a place at night. I suppose I'll have to put up with it. I never brought a bit of salt in. Even when we moved in the confusion musical academy he was going to make on the first floor drawing room with a brass plate, or Bloom's private hotel, he suggested go and ruin himself altogether the way his father did down in Ennis, like all the things he told father he was going to do and me, but I saw through him, telling me all the lovely places we could go for the honeymoon, Venice by moonlight with the gondolas, and the Lake of Como. He had a picture cut out of some paper of, and mandolins and lanterns. Oh, how nice, I said. Whatever I liked, he was going to do immediately, if not sooner. Will you be my man? Will you carry my can? He ought to get a leather medal with a putty rim for all the plans he invents, then leaving us here all day. You'd never know what old beggar at the door for a crust with his long story might be a tramp and put his foot in the way to prevent me shutting it, like that picture of that hardened criminal. He was called in Lloyd's Weekly News. 20 years in jail. Then he comes out and murders an old woman for her money. Imagine his poor wife or mother or whoever she is. Such a face you'd run miles away from. I couldn't rest easy till I bolted at the doors and windows to make sure. But it's worse again being locked up like in a prison or a madhouse. They ought to be all shot, or the cat of nine tails, a big brute like that would attack a poor old woman to murder her in her bed. I'd cut them off him, so I would not that he'd be much use, still better than nothing. The night I was sure I heard burglars in the kitchen, and he went down in his shirt, with a candle and a poker, as if he was looking for a mouse as white as a sheet, frightened out of his wits, making as much noise as he possibly could for the burglar's benefit. There isn't much to steal, indeed, the Lord knows. Still, it's the feeling, especially now with Millie away, such an idea for him to send the girl down there to learn to take photographs on account of his grandfather, instead of sending her to Scary's Academy, where she'd have to learn, not like me, getting all uh, is at school, only he'd do a thing like that, all the same, on account of me and Boylan. That's why he did it. I'm certain the way he plots and plans everything out. I couldn't turn round with her in the place lately unless I bolted the door. First, gave me the fidgets, coming in without knocking first, when I put the chair against the door just as I was washing myself there below with a glove. uh, get on your nerves, then doing the log lady all day, put her in a glass case with two at a time to look at her. If he knew she broke off the hand of that little gimcrack statue with her roughness and carelessness before she left, that I got that little Italian boy to mend, so that you can't see the joint for 2 shillings, wouldn't even team the potatoes for you. Of course she's right, not to ruin her hands. I noticed he was always talking to her lately at the table, explaining things in the paper, and she pretending to understand sly, of course. That comes from his side of the house. He can't say I pretend things, can he? I'm too honest, as a matter of fact, and helping her into her coat. But if there was anything wrong with her, it's me. She'd tell, not him, I suppose. He thinks I'm finished, out, and laid on the shelf. Well, I'm not, no, nor anything like it. Well, see, we'll see. Now she's well on for flirting too with Tom Devon's 2 sons, imitating me, whistling with those romps of Murray girls, calling for her. Can Millie come out, please? She's in great demand to pick what they can out of her round in Nelson Street, riding Harry Devon's bicycle at night. It's as well he sent her where she is. She was just getting out of bounds, wanting to go on the skating rink and smoking their cigarettes through their nose. I smelled it off her dress when I was biting off the thread of the button I sewed onto the bottom of her jacket. She couldn't hide much from me, I tell you. Only I oughtn't to have stitched it, and it on her. It brings a parting and the last plum pudding to split in 2 halves. seed comes out no matter what they say. Her tongue is a bit too long for my taste. Your blouse is open too low, she says to me, the pan calling the kettle black bottom, and I had to tell her not to cock her legs up like that on show on the window sill before all the people passing. They all look at her like me. When I was her age, of course, any old rag looks well on you. Then a great touch me not to, in her own way, at the only way in the Theatre Royal. Take your foot away out of that. I hate people touching me. Afraid of her life, I'd crushed her skirt with the pleats. A lot of that touching must go on in theaters, in the crush, in the dark. They're always trying to wiggle up to you, that fellow in the pit at the Gaiety for Beer Bomb Tree in Trilby, the last time I'll ever go there to be squashed like that for any Trilby. Or her bear bum every 2 minutes tipping me there and looking away. He's a bit daft. I think I saw him after trying to get near two stylish dressed ladies outside Switzer's window at the same little game. I recognized him on the moment, the face and everything, but he didn't remember me. Yes, and she didn't even want me to kiss her at the Broadstone going away. Well, I hope she'll get someone to dance attendance on her the way I did when she was down with the mumps and her glands swollen. Where's this and where's that? Of course, she can't feel anything deep. Yet I never came properly till I was, 22 or so. It went into the wrong place always, only the usual girl's nonsense and giggling that Connie Connolly writing to her in white ink on black paper, sealed with sealing wax, though she clapped when the curtain came down because he looked so handsome. Then we had Martin Harvey for breakfast, dinner, and supper. I thought to myself afterwards, it must be real love if a man gives up his life for her that way for nothing. I suppose there are a few men like that left. It's hard to believe in it, though, unless it really happened to me, the majority of them with not a particle of love in their natures. To find two people like that nowadays, full up of each other, that would feel the same way as you do.
They're usually a bit foolish in the head. His father must have been a bit queer to go and poison himself after her, still poor old man. I suppose he felt lost. She's always making love to my things too. The few old rags I have wanting to put her hair up. At 15 my powder too. Only ruin her skin on her. She's time enough for that all her life after, of course. She's restless knowing she's pretty, with her lips so red, a pity they won't stay that way. I was too, but there's no use going to the fair with a thing answering me like a fisherwoman when I asked to go for a half a stone of potatoes the day we met Mr. Joe Gallagher at the trotting matches, and she pretended not to see us in her trap with the friary, the solicitor. We weren't grand enough till I gave her two damn fine cracks across the ear. For herself, take that now for answering me like that, and that for your impudence. She had me that exasperated, of course, contradicting. I was bad tempered too, because how was it there? Was I weed in the tea, or I didn't sleep the night before? Cheese I ate, was it? And I told her over and over again not to leave knives crossed like that because she has nobody to command her, as she said herself. Well, it doesn't correct her faith. If will, I will. That was the last time she turned on the tea trap. I was just like that myself. They daren't order me about the place. It's his fault, of course, having the two of us slaving her instead of getting in a woman long ago. Am I ever going to have a proper servant again? Of course, then she'd see him coming. I'd have to let her know, or shed revenge. It aren't they a nuisance, that old Mrs. Fleming? You have to be walking round after her, putting the things into her hand, sneezing and farting into the pots. Well, of course, she's old. She can't help it. A good job I found, that rotten old smelly dishcloth that got lost behind the dresser. I knew there was something and opened the area window to let out the smell, bringing in his friends to entertain them like the night he walked home with a dog. If you place that, might have been mad, especially Simon Dedalus' son. His father, such a criticizer, with his glasses up, with his tall hat on him, at the cricket match, and a great big hole in his sock. One thing laughing at the other, and his son, that got all those prizes for whatever he won them in intermediate imaging, climbing over the railings. If anybody saw him that knew us, I wonder he didn't tear a big hole in his grad funeral trousers, as if the one nature gave wasn't enough for anybody hawking him down into the dirty old kitchen. Now is he right in his head? I ask. Pity it wasn't washing day. My old pair of drawers might have been hanging up too, on the line, on exhibition, for all he'd ever care, with the iron mold mark, the stupid old bundle burned on them. He might think it was something else, and she never ever rendered down the fat I told her, and now she's going such as she was an account of her paralyzed husband getting worse.
There's always something wrong with them, disease, or they have to go under an operation, or if it's not that, it's drink. And he beats her. I have to hunt around again for someone every day. I get up, there's some new thing. Oh, sweet God, sweet God. Well, when I'm stretched out dead in my grave, I suppose I'll have some peace. I want to get up a minute. If I'm wait, oh Jesus, wait. Yes, that thing has come on me. Yes, now, wouldn't that afflict you? Of course, all the poking and rooting and ploughing he had up in me now. What am I to do Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Wouldn't that pester the soul out of a body? Unless it likes it. Some men do. God knows there's always something wrong with us. 5 days every 3 or 4 weeks. Usual monthly auction. Isn't it simply sickening? That night it came on me, like that the one and only time we were in a box, that Michael Gunn gave him to see Mrs. Kendall and her husband at the gate, and something he did about insurance for him and Drimmy's that was fit to be tied, but I wouldn't give in with that gentleman of fashion staring down at me with his glasses, and him the other side of me talking about Spinoza and his soul that's dead. I suppose millions of years ago, I smiled the best I could, all in a swamp, leaning forward, as if I was interested, having to sit it out. Then to the last tag, I won't forget that wife of Scully in a hurry, supposed to be a fast play about adultery. That idiot in the gallery, hissing the woman adulteress, he shouted. I suppose he went and had a woman in the next lane, running round all the way back, ways after, to make up for it. I wish he had what I had then. He'd boo. I bet the cat itself is better off than us. Have we too much blood up in us, or what? Oh, patience. Above it's pouring out of me like the sea, anyhow. Anyhow, he didn't make me pregnant, as big as he is. I don't want to ruin the clean sheets I just put on. I suppose the clean linen I wore brought it on too down. Damn it, damn it. And they always want to see a stain on the bed, to know you're a virgin. For them, all that's troubling them. They're such fools too. You could be a widow or divorced 40 times, or a dull red ink would do. Or blackberry juice. No, that's too purply. Oh, James, you let me up out of this blue sweets of sin. Whoever suggested that business for women, what with being clothes and cooking and children, this damned old bed too, jingling like the Dickens. I suppose they could hear us away over the other side of the park, till I suggested to put the quilt on the floor with the pillow under my bottom. I wonder, is it nicer in the day? I think it is easy. I think I'll cut all this hair off me. They're scalding me. I might look like a young girl. Wouldn't he get the great sucking the next time he turned up? My clothes on me. I give anything to see his face. Was the chamber gone easy? I'm wholly horror of its breaking under me. After that old commode, I wonder, was I too heavy sitting on his knee? I made him sit in the easy chair purposely. When I took off only my blouse and skirt first in the other room, he was so busy where he oughtn't to be. He never felt me. I hope my breath was sweet after those kissing comfits. Easy. God, I remember one time I could scout it out straight, whistling like a man, almost easy. Oh Lord, how nosy. I hope there are bubbles on it for a wad of money. From some fellow I'll have no perfume. I'll have to perfume it in the morning. Don't forget, I bet he never saw a better pair of thighs than that. Look how wide they are. The smoothest place is right there, between this bit here. How soft, like a peach. Easy. God, I wouldn't mind being a man and get up on a lovely woman. Oh Lord, what a row you're making, like the Jersey lily. Easy, easy. Oh, how the waters come down at Lahore.
Who knows? Is there anything the matter with my insides? Or have I something growing in me getting that thing like that every week? When it was last, with Monday, yes, it was only about 3 weeks. I ought to go to the doctor, only it would be likely before I married him. When I had that white thing coming from me, and Floey made me go to that dry old stick Dr. Collins for women's disease on Pembroke Road. Your vagina, he called it. I suppose that's how he got all the gilt mirrors and carpets getting around those rich ones off Stephen's Green, running up to him for every little fiddle-faddle her vagina and her cochin sheena. They've money, of course, so they're all right. I wouldn't marry him, not if he was the last man in the world. Besides, there's something queer about their children. Always smelling around those filthy bitches, all sides asking me what I did, had an offensive odour, what he did, he want me to do. But one thing gold maybe, what a question if I smattered all over his wrinkly old face for him, with all my compliments. I suppose he'd know then, and could pass it, and could you pass it easily pass what I thought he was talking about? The Rock of Gibraltar, the way he put that's a very nice invention too, by the way. Only I like letting myself down after in the hole as far as I can squeeze and pull the chain then to flush it. Nice cool pins and needles, still there's something in it. I suppose I have always used to know by Millie's when she was a child whether she had worms or not. Still, all the same, paying him for that. How much is that, doctor? 1 guinea, please. And asking me, had I frequent omissions? Where do those old fellas get all the words that they have omissions with his short-sighted eyes and me cocked sideways? I wouldn't trust him too far to give me chloroform or God knows what else. Still, I liked him. When he sat down to write the thing, out frowning, so severe his nose intelligent, like that you be damned you lying strap or anything. No matter who except an idiot he was clever enough to spot. That of course that was all thinking of him in this and his mad crazy letters. My precious one. Everything connected with your glorious body, everything underlined. That comes from it is a thing of beauty and of joy. For forever something he got out of some nonsensical book that he had always at myself 4 or 5 times a day. Sometimes, and I said I hadn't. Are you sure? Oh yes, I said. I'm quite sure in a way that shut him up. I knew what was coming next, only natural weakness. It was he excited me. I don't know how the first night ever we met when I was living in Rehoboth Terrace, We stopped staring at one another for about 10 minutes as we met somewhere. I suppose on account of my being Jewess looking only after my mother. He used to amuse me, the things he said, with the half-slewering smile in him, and all the Doyles said he was going to stand for a Member of Parliament. Oh, wasn't I the born fool to believe all his blather about Home Rule and the Land League, sending me that long strool of a song out of the Huguenots to sing in French, or the more classy "Au beau pays de la Touraine" that I never sang once, explaining and rigmaroling about religion and persecution. He won't let you enjoy anything naturally. Then might he, as a great favour, the very first opportunity he got a chance in Brighton Square, running into my bedroom, pretending the ink got in his hands to wash it off with the Albion milk and sulphur soap I used to use and the gelatin still around it. Oh, I laughed myself sick at him that day. I better not make an all-night sitting on this affair. They ought to make chambers a natural size so that the woman could sit in it properly. He kneels down to do it, I suppose. There isn't in all creation another man with his habits. He had looked at the way he's sleeping at the foot of the bed. How can he without a hard bolster to its well? He doesn't kick, or he might knock out all my teeth, breathing with his hand on his nose, like that Indian god he took me to show one wet Sunday in the museum in Kildare Street, all yellow in a pinafore, lying on his side in his hand, with his 10 toes sticking out, that he said was a bigger religion than the Jews and our Lords both put together all over Asia. Imitating him, as he's always imitating everybody, he used to sleep at the foot of the bed, too, with his big square feet up in his wife's mouth. Damn this stinking thing anyway. Where's those napkins are? Ah, yes, I know. I hope the old press doesn't creak. Ah, I knew it would. He's sleeping hard, had a good time somewhere. Till she must have given him great value for his money, and of course, he has to pay for it from her. Oh, this nuisance of a thing. I hope they'll have something better for us in the other world. Trying ourselves up, God help us. That's all right for tonight. Now, the lumpy old jingly bed always reminds me of old Cohen. I suppose he scratched himself in it often enough, and he thinks father bought it from Lord Napier, that I used to admire when I was a little girl because I told him how easy piano. Oh, I like my bed. God, here we are, as bad as ever after 16 years. How many houses were we in at all? Raymond Terrace and Ontario Terrace and Lombard Street and Hollis Street. And he goes whistling every time we're on the run again. His Huguenots are the frogs marching, pretending to help the men with our 4 sticks of furniture. And then the City Arms Hotel, worse and worse, says Wharton Daly. That charming place on the landing, always having somebody inside praying, then leaving all their stinks after them. Always know who was in there last every time we're just getting on right. Something happens or he puts his big foot in it. Thomas and Hellis and Mr. Cuffs and the Drimmies. Either he's going to run into prison over his old lottery tickets, that was to be all our salvations, or he goes and gives impudence. Well, have him coming home with his sack soon out of the Freeman's, like the rest on accounts of those Sinn Féin or the Freemasons. Then, well, if the little man he showed me dribbling along in the wet, all by himself round by Coidius Lane, he will give him much consolation that he says is so capable and sincerely Irish. He is indeed, judging by the sincerity of the trousers I saw him. Wait, there's George's church bell. Wait 3/4 the hour. I wait 2 o'clock. Well, that's a nice hour for the night for him to be coming home. As to anybody climbing down into the area, if anybody saw him, I'll knock him off that little habit tomorrow. First, I'll look at his shirt to see, or I'll see if he has those French letters still in his pocketbook. I suppose he thinks I don't know deceitful men. All their 20 pockets to rent, enough for their lies. Then why should we tell them, even if it's the truth, that I don't believe you, then tucked up in bed, like those babies in the aristocrat's masterpiece he brought me Another time, as if we hadn't enough of that in real life without some old aristocrats, or whatever his name is, disgusting you more than those rotten pictures children with two heads and no legs. It's kind of villainy there, always dreaming about not another thing in their empty heads. They ought to get slow poison, and the half of them then tea and toast for him, buttered on both sides and new laid eggs, I suppose. I'm nothing any more when I should let him lick me in Holles Street. One night, man tyrant as ever, for one thing, he slept on the floor, half the night naked the way the Jews used when somebody dies belonged to them, and wouldn't eat any breakfast or speak a word, wanting to be so petted, so I thought. I stood out enough for one time and let him. He does it all wrong too, thinking only of his own pleasure. His tongue is too flat, and I don't know what he forgot at that wedding. I don't. I'll make him do it again if he doesn't mind, and lock him down to sleep in the coal cellar with the black beetles. I wonder was it her Josie off the bed with my cast-offs? He's such a born liar too. No, he'd never have the courage with a married woman. That's why he wants me and Boylan. Though, as for her, Dennis, as she calls him, that forlorn-looking spectacle, you couldn't call him a husband. Yes, it's some little bitch he's got in with even when I was with him with Millie at the college races. That hornblower with the child's bonnet on top of his knob let us in by the back way. He was throwing his sheep's eyes at those two things, skirt duty up and down. I tried to wink at him. First, no use, of course. And that's the way his money goes. This is the fruits of Mr. Paddy Dignam. Yes, they were all in great style at the grand funeral, in the paper Boylan brought in, as if they saw a real officer's funeral. There'd be something reversed, arms muffled, drums, the poor horse walking behind in black. El Boom and Tom Kernan, that drunken little barley man that bit his tongue off falling down the men's WC, drunk in some place, or others, and Martin Cunningham and the two Daedaluses and Fanny McCoy's husband, white-headed cabbage, skinny thing with a turn in her eye, trying to sing my songs she'd want to be born all over again, and her old green dress with the low neck as she can't attract them in any other way, like dabbling on a rainy day. I see it all now plainly, and they call that friendship. Killing and then burying one another, and they all with their wives and families at home, more especially Jack Power, keeping that barmaid he does, of course. His wife is always sick, or going to be sick, or just getting better of it. And he's a good-looking man. Still, though, he's not getting a bit grey over the ears. They're a nice lot, all of them. Well, they're not going to get my husband again into their churches if I can help it, making fun of him. Then, behind his back, I know well, when he goes out with his idiotics, because he has the sense enough not to squander every penny piece he earns down their gullets, and look after his wife and family good for nothings, poor Paddy Dignam. All the same, I'm sorry in a way for him. What are his wife and 5 children going to do? Unless he was insured, a comical little teetotum, always stuck up in some pub corner, and her or her son watching Billy Bailey. Won't you please come home? Her widow's weeds won't improve her appearance, and they're awfully becoming, though, if you're good looking. And what man wasn't he? Yes, he was at the Glencree dinner, and Ben Dollard bass barrel-toned the night he borrowed the Swallowtail to sing out of in Holles Street, squeezed and squashed into them, and then grilling all over his big dolly face like a well-whipped child's body. Didn't he look a balmy bollock sure enough? That must have been a spectacle on the stage. Imagine paying 5 shillings in the preserved seats for that, to see him trotting off in his growlers and Simon Daedalus. Too, he was always turning up half-screwing, singing the sound verse. First you owed love as the new was one of his sweetly sung, the maiden under Hawthorn bough. He was always on for flirty frying too. When I sang Mauritania for him at the Freddie Myers private opera, he had a delicious, glorious voice. Phoebe, dearest, goodbye, sweetheart. Sweetheart, he always sang it, not like Bartell D'Arcy, sweet tart goodbye. Of course, he had the gift of the voice, so there was no art in all. Oh, in all, in in it all over you like a warm shower bath. Oh, Martina, wildwood flower. We sang splendidly, although it was a bit high for my register, even transposed, and he was married at the time to May Goulding. But then he'd say or do something to knock the good out of it. He's a widower now. I wonder what sort is his son. Says he's an author and going to be university professor of Italian. And I'm to take lessons. What is driving at now? Showing him my photo is not good of me. I ought to have got it taken in drapery that never looks out of fashion. And still I look young in it. I wonder why he didn't make him a present of it altogether. And me too, after all. Why not? I saw him driving down to the Knightsbridge station with his father and mother. I was in mourning. That's 11 years ago now. Yes. He'd be 11 though. What was the good in going into mourning? For what was neither one thing nor the other. The first cry was enough for me when I heard the death watch 2 ticking in the wall, of course. He insisted he'd go into mourning for the cat. I suppose he's a man now by this time. He was an innocent boy then, and a darling little fellow in his Lord Fauntleroy suit, and curly hair like a prince on the stage. When I saw him at Matt Dillon's, he liked me too. I remember they all do wait, by God, yes, wait, yes, hold on. He was on the cards this morning when I laid out the deck, Union, with a young stranger neither dark nor fair. You met before I thought it meant him, but he's no chicken, nor a stranger either. Besides, my face was turned the other way. What was the 7th card after that, the 10 of spades, for a journey by the land? There was a letter on its way, and scandals too. The 3 of queens and the 8 of diamonds for a rise in society. Yes, wait, it all came out, and 2 red, 8s for the new garment. Look at that, and I hope I didn't dream something too. Yes, there was something about poetry in it. I hope he hasn't long, greasy hair hanging into his eyes or standing up like a red Indian. What do they go about like that for only getting themselves and their poetry laughed at? I always liked poetry when I was a girl first, and I thought he was a poet like Lord Byron, and not an ounce of it in his composition. I thought he was quite different. I wonder, is he too young? He's about, wait, 88? I was married 88, Millie is 15 yesterday. 89. What age was he then? At Dillon's 5 or 6, about 88? I suppose he's 20 or more. I'm not too old for him if he's 23 or 24. I hope he's not that stuck-up university student. Sort no other he wouldn't go sitting down in the old kitchen with him taking Epps cocoa and talking, of course. He pretended to understand it all, probably. He told him he was out of Trinity College. He's very young to be a professor. I hope he's not a professor like Goodwin was. He was a potent professor of John Jameson. They all write about some woman in their poetry. Well, I suppose he won't find many like me, where softly sighs of love, the light guitar where poetry is in the air, the blue sea and the moon shining, so beautifully coming back on a night boat from Tarifa, the lighthouse at Europa. Point of the guitar that fellow played was so expressive. Will I ever go back there again with all the new faces and 2 glancing eyes? A lattice hid, I'll sing that for him. They're my eyes if he's anything of a poet. 2 eyes as darkly bright as love's own star. Aren't those beautiful words as love's young star? It'll be a change, the Lord knows, to have an intelligent person to talk to about yourself, not always listening to him. And Billy Prescott's ads and Kara's ad and Tom the Devil's ad. Then if something goes wrong in their business, we have to suffer. I'm sure he's very distinguished. I'd like to meet a man like that. God, not only those other ruck besides. He's young, those fine young men. I could see down in Margate Strand, the bathing place from the side of the rock, standing up in the sun naked like a god or something, and then plunging into the sea with them. Why aren't all men like that? There'd be some consolation for a woman like that lovely little statue he bought. I could look at him all day, long curly head on his shoulders, his finger, up for you to listen. There's real beauty and poetry for you. I often felt I wanted to kiss him all over his lovely young cock. There, so simple. I wouldn't mind taking him in my mouth if nobody was looking, as if it was asking you to suck it so clean and white he looks with his boyish face. I would too in half a minute, even if some of it went down where it's only like gruel or the dew, there's no danger besides. He'd be so clean compared to those pigs of men. I suppose never dreamt of washing it from one year's end to the other. The most of them, only that's what gives the woman the moustaches. I'm sure it'll be grand only if I can only get in with a handsome young poet at my age. I'll throw them the first thing in the morning till I see if the wish card comes out. Or I'll try pairing the lady herself and see if he comes out. I'll read and study all I can find or learn a bit off by heart if I know who he likes, so he won't think me stupid if he thinks all women are the same. And I can teach him the other parts. I'll make him feel all over him till he feels faint, till he half faints under me. Then hell write about me lover and mistress publicity. Too, with our two photographs in all the papers when he becomes famous. Oh, but then what am I going to do about him though?
No, that's no way for him. Has he no manners, nor no refinement, nor no nothing in his nature, slapping us behind like that on my bottom because I didn't call him Hugh, the ignoramus that doesn't know poetry from a cabbage. That's what you get for not keeping them in their proper place. Pulling off his shoes and trousers there on the chair before me, so barefaced, without even asking permission, and standing out that vulgar way in the half of a shirt they wear, to be admired like a priest or a butcher or those old hypocrites. In the time of Julius Caesar, of course, he's right enough in his way to pass. The time as a joke, sure, you might as well be in bed with a lion. God, I'm sure he'd have something better to say for himself. An old lion would. Oh, well, I suppose it's because they were so plump and tempting in my short petticoat. He couldn't resist. They excite myself sometimes. It's well for men all the amount of pleasure they get off a woman's body were so round and wide for them always. I wished I was one myself for a change, just to try with that thing they have swelling up on you so hard and at the same time so soft when you touch in. My Uncle John has a thing long I heard those corner boys saying passing the corner of Marrowbone Lane. My Aunt Mary has a thing hairy because it was dark and they knew a girl was passing. It didn't make me blush. Why should it? Either it's only nature. And he puts his thing long into my Aunt Mary's hairy, etc. And turns out to be you put the handle in a sweeping brush. Then again, all over they can pick and choose what they please, a married woman or a fast widow or a girl for their different tastes, like those houses round behind Irish Street. No, but were to be always chained up, they are not going to be chaining me up. No damn fear. Once I start, I tell you, for their stupid husbands, jealously, why can't we all remain friends over it instead of quarreling? Her husband found it out, what they did together. Well, naturally. And if he did, can he undo it? His coronator anyway. whatever he does, and then he going to the other mad extreme about the wife in Fair Tyrants, of course. The man never even casts a second thought on the husband or wife either. It's the woman he wants and he gets, he want else were we given all those desires. For I'd like to know, I can't help it. If I'm young, still can I? It's a wonder. I'm not an old shriveled hag before my time living with him. So cold, never embracing me except sometimes when he's asleep. The wrong end of me not knowing, I suppose, who he has any man that would kiss a woman's bottom. I throw my hat at him. After that he'd kiss anything unnatural where we haven't a atom of any kind of expression in us. All of us the same two lumps of lad before ever I'd do that to a man prove. The dirty brutes, the mere thought is enough. I kiss the feet of you, Signorita. There's some sense in that, didn't he kiss our hall door? Yes, he did. What a madman. Nobody understands his cracked ideas. But me still, of course, a woman wants to be embraced 20 times a day almost to make her look young, no matter by who, so long as to be in love or loved by somebody. If the fellow you want isn't there, sometimes by the Lord God, I was thinking, would I go around by the quays there's some dark evening where nobody know me and pick up a sailor off the sea? That would be hot on for it, and not care a pin whose I was only do it off up in a gate somewhere, or one of those wild-looking gypsies in Rathvenham had they camp pitched near the Bloomfield laundry to try and steal our things if they could. I only sent mine there a few times for the name Model Laundry sending me back over and over some old ones, odd stockings, that blackguard looking fellow with the fine eyes peeling a switch attack me in the dark and write me up against the wall without a word or murder anybody. What they do themselves, the fine gentlemen in their silk hats, that Casey lives up somewhere this way coming out of Hardwick Lane. The night he gave us the fish supper on account of winning over the boxing match, of course. It was for me he gave it. I knew him by his gaiters and the walk, and when I turned round a minute after just to see there was a woman after coming out of it to some further prostitute. Then he goes home to his wife. After that only, I suppose, the half of those sailors are rotten again with disease. Oh, move over your big carcass out of that for the love of Mike. Listen to him. The winds that waft my sighs to thee, so well he may sleep and sigh, the great Chichester, Don Poldo de la Flora, if he knew how he came out on the cards. This morning he'd have something to sigh for a dark man in some perplexity between 272 in prison, for Lord knows what he does that I don't know. And I'm to be slouching around down in the kitchen to get his lordship his breakfast while he's rolled up like a mummy. Will I indeed? Did you ever see me running I just like to see myself as it shows them attention. And they treat you like dirt. I don't care what anybody says. It would be much better for the world to be governed by the women in it. You wouldn't see women going and killing one another and slaughtering. When do you ever see women rolling around drunk like they do, or gambling every penny they have and losing it on horses? Yes, because a woman, whatever she does, she knows where to stop, sure. They wouldn't be in the world at all, only for us.
They don't know what it is to be a woman and a mother. How could they? How could they? Where would they all of them be if they hadn't all a mother to look after them? What I never had that's what I never had. That's why I suppose he's running wild now, out at night, away from his books and studies, and not living at home, on account of the usual rowy house. Rowy house, I suppose. Well, it's a poor case that those have a fine son like that they're not satisfied, and I none. Was he not able to make one? It wasn't my fault. It came together when I was watching the two dogs up in her, behind in the middle of the naked street, that disheartened me altogether. I suppose I oughtn't to have buried him in that little woolly jacket I knitted, crying as I was, but give it to some poor child. But I knew, well, I'd never have another. Our first death too. It was we were never the same. And so I'm not going to think myself into the glooms about that any more. I wonder why he wouldn't stay the night. I felt all the time I was somebody strange he brought in, instead of rowing around the city, meeting God, knows who night walkers and pickpockets. His poor mother wouldn't like that, if she was alive. Ruining himself for life, perhaps still it's a lovely hour, so silent. I used to love coming home after dances, the air of the night. They have friends they can talk to. With none. Either he wants what he won't get, or it's some woman ready to stick her knife in you. I hate that in women. No wonder they treat us the way they do. We are a dreadful lot of bitches. I suppose it's all the troubles we have. Makes us so snappy. I'm not like that. He could easily have slept in there on the sofa in other room, I suppose. He was as shy as a boy, he being so young, hardly 20 of me in the next room. He have heard me on the chamber, what harms Daedalus. I wonder it's like those names in Gibraltar, De La Paz, De La Grazia. They had the devil's queer names there. Father Villaplana of Santa Maria, that gave me the Rosary Rosales y O'Reilly in the Cal Las Siete Revueltas and Bisimbo, and Mrs. Opiso in Governor Street. Oh, what a name. I'd go and drown myself in the first river if I had a name like her. Oh, my, and all the bits of the streets Paradise Ramp, and Bedlam Ramp, and Rogers Ramp, and Crochester's Ramp, and the Devil's Gap steps were small blame to me if I am a harum-scarum. I know I'm a bit. I declare to God I don't feel a day older than then. I wonder I could get my tongue round any of the Spanish como estas to bien gracias used. See, I haven't forgotten it all. I thought I had only for the grammar a noun is the name of any person, place, or thing. Pity I never tried to read that novel, Cantanqueros, Mrs. Rubio lent me by Valera, with the questions in it, all upside down. The two ways I always knew we'd go away in the end. I can tell him the Spanish, and he tell me Italian. Then he'll see I'm not so ignorant. What a pity he didn't stay. I'm sure the poor fellow was dead tired and wanted a good sleep. Badly? I could have brought him in his breakfast in bed with a bit of toast, so long as I didn't do it on the knife for bad luck. Or if the woman was going her rounds with the watercress and something nice and tasty there are a few olives in the kitchen he might like. I never could bear the look on them of them in aprons. I could do the criada, the room looks I could do the criama, the room looks all right. Since I changed it in the other way, you see, something was telling me all the time I'd have to introduce myself, not knowing me from Adam. Very funny, wouldn't it? I'm his wife, or pretend we were in Spain with him, half awake without a God's notion. Where he is, das huevos estrelados, senor. Lord, the cracked things come into my head sometimes. It'd be great fun supposing he stayed with us. Why not there's a room upstairs empty, and Millie's bed in the back room. He could do his writing and studies at the table in there, for all the scribbling he does at it. And if he wants to read in bed in the morning, like me, as he's making the breakfast for one, he can make it for two. I'm sure I'm going to take in lodgers off the street for him if he takes a gazebo of a house like this. I'd like to have a long talk with an intelligent, well-educated person. I'd have to get a nice pair of red slippers like those Turks with a fez used to sell, or yellow, and a nice semi-transparent morning gown that I badly want, or a peach blossom dressing jacket like the one long ago in Walpole's, only 8 per 6 or 18 per 6. I'd just give him one more chance. I'll get up early in the morning. I'm sick of Cohen's old bed. In any case, I might go over to the markets to see all the vegetables and cabbages and tomatoes and carrots and all kinds of splendid fruits, all coming in lovely and fresh. Who knows who'd be the first man I'd meet there? They're out looking for it in the morning. Mammy Dillon used to say they are. And the night too. That was her mass going. I'd love a big juicy pear now, to melt in your mouth, like when I used to be in the longing way. Then I'll throw him up his eggs and tea in the moustache cup she gave him, to make his mouth bigger. I suppose he'd like my nice cream too. I know what I'll do. I'll go about rather gay, not too much singing. A bit now and then. Mi fa pietà massetto. Then I start dressing myself. To go out presto, non so più forte. I'll put on my best shift and drawers, let him have a good eyeful out of that to make his Mickey stand for him. I let him know, if that's what he wanted, that his wife is fucked, yes. And damn well fucked too. To my neck nearly not by him 5 or 6 time hand running theirs, the mark of his spunk on the clean sheet. I wouldn't bother to even iron it out. That ought to satisfy him. If you don't believe me, feel my belly. Unless I made him stand there and put him into me, I've a mind to tell him every scrap and make him do it out in front of me. Serve him right.
It's all his own fault if I'm an adulteress. As the thing in the gallery, and oh much about it if that's all the harm ever we did in this vale of tears. God knows it's not decent as everybody only hide it, I suppose. That's what a woman is supposed to be there for, or he wouldn't have made us that way. He did, so attractive to men. If he wants to kiss my bottom, I'll drag open my drawers and bulge it right out of his face as large as life. He can stick his tongue 7 miles up my holus. He's there, my brown part. Then I'll tell him I want £1 or maybe 30 shilling. I'll tell him I want to buy underclothes. Then if he gives me that, well, he won't be too bad. I don't want to soak it all out of him like other women do. I could often have written out a fine cheque for myself and write his name on it for a couple of pounds. A few times he forgot to lock it up besides. He won't spend it. I'll let him do it off on me behind, provided he doesn't smear all over my good drawers. Oh, I suppose that can't be helped. I'll do the indifferent 1 or 2 questions I'll know by the answers. When he's like that, he can keep a thing back. I know every turn in him I'll tighten my bottom well and let out a few smutty words, smell rump or lick my shit, or the first mad thing comes into my head. Then I'll suggest about yes. Oh, wait now, sonny. My turn is coming. I'll be quite gay and friendly over it. Oh, but I was forgetting this bloody pest of a thing, foof. You wouldn't know which to laugh or cry with such a mixture of plum and apple. No, I'll have to wear the old thing so much the better. It'll be more pointed hell. Never know whether he did or not. There, that's good enough for you, any old thing at all. Then I'll wipe him off me just like a business his omission. Then I'll go out, I'll have him eyeing up the ceiling. Where is she gone now? Make him want me, that's the only way a quarter. After what an unearthly hour, I suppose. They're just getting up in China now, combing out their pigtails for the day. Well, we'll soon have the nuns ringing the Angelus. They've nobody coming in to spoil their sleep except an old priest or two for his night office, or the alarm clock next door at cockshout, clattering the brains out of itself. Let me see if I can doze off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What kind of flowers are those? They invented like the stars, the wallpaper in Lombard Street. Was much nicer. The apron he gave me was like that something. Only I wore it twice better. Lower this lamp and try again. So as I can get up early, I'll go to Lambay's, there besides Findlater's, and get them to send us some flowers, to put out about the place in case he brings them home tomorrow. Today, I mean no Friday, an unlucky day. First, I want to do the place up some way. The dust grows in it. I think while I'm asleep, then we must have music and cigarettes. I can accompany him first. I must clean the keys of the piano with milk. What'll I wear? Shall I wear a white rose or those fairy cakes in Lipton? I love the smell of a rich big shop at 7.5 pence a pound, or the other ones with cherries in them and the pink sugar. 11 pence, a couple of pounds of those, a nice plant for the middle of the table. I'd get that cheaper in weight. Where's this? I saw them not long ago. I love flowers. I'd love to have the place swimming in roses. God of heaven. There's nothing like nature, the wild mountains and the sea and the waves rushing, than the beautiful country with fields of oats and wheat and all kinds of things, and all the fine cattle going about. What would do your heart good to see, rivers and lakes and flowers, all sorts of shapes and smells and colours, springing up even out of the ditches, primroses and violets, nature, as it is for them, saying there's no God. I wouldn't give a snap of my 2 fingers for all their learning. Why don't they go and create something? I often asked them. Atheists, or whatever they call themselves, go and wash the cobbles off themselves first. Then they go howling for the priest, and they dying. And why? Why? Because they're afraid of hell on account of their bad conscience. Ah, yes, I know them well. Who was the first person in the universe before there was anybody that made it all? Who? Ah, they don't know. Neither do I. So, there you are. They might as well try to stop the sun from rising tomorrow. The sun shines for you, he said, the day we were lying among the rhododendrons on Houthead in the grey tweed and his straw hat. The day I got him to propose to me, yes. First I gave him the bit of seed cake out of my mouth, and it was leap year like now, yes, 16 years ago, my God. After that long kiss, I near lost my breath. Yes, he said I was a flower of the mountain, yes. So we are flowers, all a woman's body, yes. That was one true thing he said in his life. And the sun shines for you today. Yes, that was why I liked him. Because I saw he understood or felt what a woman is. And I knew I could always get around him and give him all the pleasure I could, leading him on till he asked me to say yes. And I would answer first, only looking out over the sea, and the sky. I was thinking of so many things he didn't know of. Mulvey and Mr. Stanhope, and Hester and father, and old Captain Groves and the sailors playing All Birds Fly. And I say stoop. And washing up dishes, they called it, on the pier, and the sentry in front of the governor's house, with the thing around his white helmet. Poor devil, half roasted, and the Spanish girls laughing in their shawls, and their tall combs in the auctions in the morning. All Greeks and the Jews and the Arabs and the devil knows who else, from all the ends of Europe and Duke Street, and the foul market all clutting outside Larby Sharon's, and the poor donkeys slipping half asleep, and the vague fellows in the cloaks asleep in the shade on the steps, and the big wheels of the carts of the bulls in the old castle thousands of years old. Yes, and those Hampson Moors, all in white and turbans like kings, asking you to sit down in their little bit of a shop and wander with the old window of the posadas, two glancing eyes, a lattice hid for her lover to kiss the iron, and the wine shops half open at night, and the castanets in the night we missed the boat at Algeciras, the watchman going about with a serene lamp, and oh, those deep down turned and the sea
crimson sometimes like fire, and the glorious sunsets, and the fig trees in the Alameda Gardens, yes, and all the queer little streets, and the pink and blue and yellow houses, and the rose gardens, and the jessamine and geraniums and cactuses, and Gibraltar as a girl, where I was a flower of the mountain, yes, when I put the rose in my hair, like the Andalusian girls used, or shall I wear a red? Yes. And how he kissed me under the Moorish wall, and I thought, well him as another, and then I asked him with my eyes to ask again, yes, and then he asked me, would I, yes, to say yes, my mountain flower, and first I put my arms around him, yes, and drew him down to me so he could feel my breasts, all perfume, yes, and his heart was going like mad, and yes, I said yes, I will, yes. Trieste, Zurich, Paris, 1914 to 1921. Thank you, everybody. And until the next time, sorry about the start hassles, but hey, thanks to all the readers. I think we wrap this up. Yes.